Okay, I remember the date on this, August 13th, 1993, 9:27 p.m. A short little round guy knocked on my door. I answered the door. His name was Steve Kowalski. He was standing on my front porch and he handed me a summons. Anybody ever been served a summons before? Anyone here? It's not a good thing. If you get served a summons, it probably means somebody is taking you to court, and that's the way it was for me. It was from the Chancery Court of Pulaski County, Arkansas District number 5, case number 93462. And it was signed by Judge Helen Brantley. How many of you know what the word litigious means? If you're an American, and we have many people here that are not Americans, and that's good. I want to have more people that are not Americans here. I want to have more Americans too. I want more people to come and worship the Lord with us. But if you're an American, you know what litigious means, because Americans are very litigious. And all that means is we like to sue each other with great regularity and vigor. It doesn't matter if we have a case or not. We just like to sue each other. The U.S. judicial system has degenerated into kind of a lottery for lawyers. And so they'll bring any kind of suit, whether it seems frivolous or not. I don't know if you heard this, but last year it was a big deal in the news for a couple of weeks. Some guy was suing his dry cleaners because they lost his pants. And, you know, that's ridiculous enough, but they sued the dry cleaners for like $14 million. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot for a pair of pants. Seems like a lot. I could be wrong about that. You know, I really like my pants too, but I don't know. 14 million, that's a lot. So I've seen the U.S. justice system from about every angle. I've been a defendant. I've been sued. I've been a witness, which I learned a lot in that. That was a great experience. I was a juror, which was quite an alarming experience as I began to understand exactly how people sit around a table and come to a decision. It was quite alarming for me. It's amazing that justice is ever served. But I've never been a plaintiff. I've never sued anyone. But I learned two things going through this process, going through the court. I learned at least two things. One is men try, but men aren't very good at actually getting to the truth and dispensing justice. Most of the time it comes down to who's got the slickest lawyer, and that's unfortunate. But the thing I walked away with was the absolute power of the court to do whatever it chose to do in my life. The judge had the power to radically change my life for good or for bad. It really was up to her. And I really felt quite helpless sitting there. And I had my attorney, and he was doing his thing, and that was good. He was making arguments for me. But I realized, you know, it's in her hands. And she has the power to change my life in a radical way. And I thought this was a great spiritual lesson. Because we all have a summons coming, right? Now, while you will probably never encounter Steve Kowalski, you will encounter his cosmic counterpart. And while you will never stand in front of Judge Ellen Brantley, I doubt, unless you take up residence in Little Rock, you will also stand in front of her cosmic counterpart. Because death is God's summons. As one person said, death is God's errand boy. And Steve Kowalski was Judge Brantley's errand boy. And he would go out and tell people, you have to come stand in front of the judge. And death is God's errand boy. Death is God's summons. And we all have that coming. The summons that Steve Kowalski handed me, it said this: you are hereby notified that a lawsuit has been filed against you. The relief asked is stated in the attached complaint. You are hereby ordered to file a pleading and thereafter appear and present your defense. Romans chapter 1 and the following chapters, it gives us some feel of what it's about, that each one of us will be called into the courtroom of God. And I want you to understand this. In the courtroom of God, God is the plaintiff. Okay? God is the plaintiff, God is the prosecutor, God is the witness, and God is the judge. And when God brings a suit, it's factual. And when God makes His case, it's airtight. And when God gives His testimony, it's true. And when God renders His judgment, it's final. It's eternally final. In the courtroom of God, there'll be no cross-examination, there'll be no rebuttals, there'll be no plea bargains, there'll be no objections, and there will be no appeals in the courtroom of God. One thing that the Bible makes very, very clear, God is just. God is a perfectly just God. Psalm 89:14, righteousness and justice are the foundation of thy throne. Psalm 19:9, the judgments of the Lord are true. They are righteous altogether. A.W. Tozer says, justice is not something God does, it's who He is. Let me ask you, do you want justice from God? Does anybody in here think they want justice from God? We don't want justice from God, because we would be hopelessly condemned. We need grace from God. I love what D.A. Carson talks about all moral, intelligent beings coming before the bar of God for judgment. And I love what he says about this. And I want you to hear me. And I want you to think about this. And hopefully you'll remember this. You know, the church has gotten so squeamish about talking about hell and the punishment of God. And you don't hear it talked about much. But the Bible does not shy away from talking about eternal punishment. The Bible makes it explicitly clear. In fact, there's more from the lips of Jesus Christ than from any other source. He talks about the reality of eternal judgment. Listen to what D.A. Carson says. I think this is very important. One of the things the Bible insists upon is that in the end, not only will justice be done, I love this, not only will justice be done, but justice will be seen to be done. And what I told the morning congregation, there won't be anybody walking away from the bar of God saying, that's wrong. I was treated unjustly. That's not fair. That will never happen. Even the man that lands in hell for his own sin, he will not be able to say, I was not judged properly or correctly or justly. Not only will justice be done, I want you to remember this, not only will justice be done, but justice will be seen to be done. And D.A. Carson closes that quote like this, and every mouth will be stopped. There's not going to be any complaining about the perfect justice and the perfect disposition of that justice from the bar of God. There will be no appeal because it will be perfect. It will be pristine. It will be flawless. I love what John Piper says. He says, at the bar of God, all moral accounts in the universe will be perfectly and eternally settled. There will be no outstanding claims or grievances. So let's look at 1 John chapter 2. You say, well, Jim, what's that got to do with the text? John is going to be using legal language tonight, and it's important. It's important, and I think that the intro sets the stage for us. That's what it has to do with the text. 1 John chapter 2, verse 1. My little children, I am writing these things to you that you may not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. And He Himself is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for those of the whole world. I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. This will be my fourth sermon on 1 John. And maybe some of you in the first three sermons are feeling a little traumatized. Because John is a black and white preacher. He calls sin, sin, and he says what it is. And one thing I love about John is, he learned from the best. He watched Christ preach for 3 years. And John preaches the same way. He writes the same way. He calls sin, sin, and he preaches like sin really matters, and like hell is real, and like Jesus Christ is the most important thing in your life. And I've said this to you many times. That's because He is. There's nothing in front of Christ. Nothing. Nothing in front of Christ. And John keeps talking to us in these unrelenting and unbending and exacting terms. We saw it in chapter 1, verse 7. If we say we have fellowship with Him and yet we walk in the darkness, John just says it right out. He says we're liars. He says we're liars and we don't practice the truth. Chapter 2, verse 4, the one who says I have come to know Him and does not keep His commandments, he's a liar. The truth is not in him. Chapter 2, verse 15, if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Chapter 3, verse 6, no one who abides in Him sins. No one